Hello everyone and welcome back to Marco's channel. I'm Diandra Bramer-Shireman and I am a business partner of Marco's. I am on his team with GFI and today I'm going to be interviewing Marco. So we're just going to start it off and I'm going to ask you, Marco, there seems to be a stigma about life insurance, and I find it especially in the younger age group, the millennials, my age group. So I'd love to hear from you. Why is that?
Well, you know, for the longest time, and it's not just your age group. I think it's historically been an issue or a topic that is uncomfortable. You know, when you talk about life insurance, people always feel that, oh, it's about death, because they associate life insurance to somebody passing. And that topic, especially when you're young, is not on people's minds. You know, maybe when you're older, it is, but when you're younger, I'm going to live forever. I'm 25 or 50, 30 or whatever. They don't think about it that way. But what's interesting is with life insurance, it's such a key component of estate planning, future, financial planning, making sure that people are protecting their families and so on. You get tied in with, I want to buy a house. Okay. You need homeowners insurance if you're going to take out a loan. I want to buy a car. I need a loan. You go get car insurance. And homeowners insurance, if you have a loan, it's required. Car insurance is required. Even if you don't take out a loan, you still have to have liability. Health insurance now is required, so the hospitals get paid.
That's a whole nother topic, but yeah, in the state of California, you have to have it.
So when you think about it, what about life insurance? Well, that's on you. That's the most important that's the most important piece of the puzzle.
And I have noticed, you're so right. When I mention life insurance, it's like anyone my age, 30s.
Yeah.
It's almost like, why would I even bring it up? Why would I even mention such a thing?
Yeah, because it's such an eerie topic, because people associate it immediately with death. But people don't understand life insurance in its true sense, because life insurance really is a protective mechanism for the family. So if you have a family, you want to ask yourself, if something happened to me, even if you don't die, maybe you're severely you're in an accident, something bad happens, and you're not able to work. Okay, well, what are you going to do? If you both have to work to pay the mortgage, and one person's not there to help, what does that leave to the other individual? Okay, what happens? Yeah. So, you put yourself at risk.
That's very scary.
Because because at that point, the only other options are GoFundMe pages or going to your family. And if they can't help you, your entire world changes.
So just to confirm then, you're saying even with life insurance, there are other benefits to it, living benefits.
Yes, absolutely. And so I know there's other things that we were going to talk about, but I mean, life insurance is more than just a death benefit. I know people have that stigma because they associate it with death, but the reality is it's so much more. And the most important thing is to educate people on everything it has, every benefit it brings to the table. Because like I said, it really is part of your estate planning. It really is part of your wealth, not just your wealth protection, but your wealth building and your future, especially as you age, because that's where the living benefits come in. Because we're seeing it today with the aging population. Long-term care is a big component. Well, guess what? Long-term care is insurance built into life insurance. That's the part people don't understand. So those are the things that, we try to educate people on.
Yeah.
So.
And the whole concept of estate planning, especially after having kids, that is in my forefront.
Yes.
And I'm so hung up on, especially with the home insurance issues that we're going through right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother, that's kind of taking my forefront.
Yes.
I never even thought about if something were to happen to me or my husband. We just had this conversation the other day at the dinner table. Of course, mourning the other person, but
Mm-hmm.
we are business owners. And
Yeah.
if there's a day that we don't work, we don't make money.
Yes.
So I can't imagine not having life insurance or, something to
When you're
to
self-employed,
give us.
it's even more important.
Yeah,
You
money
know,
is time.
Yeah, and
And
that's the thing is that we can talk about the four quadrants, but the reality is even 9 to 5 people that work, have an employer,
Yeah.
and they work 9 to 5, and they go, well, I got life insurance through my company. Well, do you know that's probably $50,000 to maybe $100,000? You tell me, what is that going to pay off your mortgage? Is that going to pay off your car payments? Is that going to cover what your spouse is going to be left with?
That income.
That income? Is that going
That
to
you're
take
no
care of
longer
your
getting.
children, put them through college? If those things are not addressed, your spouse doesn't have time to grieve, doesn't have time to prepare, doesn't have time to plan for the future because they're in survival mode. That $50,000, $100,000 is not going to cover everything that they're confronted with, including funeral expenses.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens is, and we see this all the time, they lose everything and have to start all over because the spouse that's remaining is they're in survival. We call it survival mode because that's all it's you and your children. That's it.
Yeah.
And if you have obviously your family hopefully is there in a position to support you and help you, but not every family has that opportunity to. They don't have those resources.
Yeah.
So that's where you can see GoFundMe pages and things like that. Well, these are things that we deal with daily. And so we just like to make sure that when we have those conversations with people, and that's just a small thing because, life insurance is one piece of the industry, but you got, retirement planning, you got all these other things. But the reality is, it is part of the estate planning. It is part of wealth protection. It's part of wealth building.
Yeah.
What you want to look for is if something were to happen, okay, if somebody does pass, the other spouse and children, everything gets paid off. And they have time to grieve. If they get injured or sick, and you mentioned living benefits, that's where living benefits kicks in. You get 75 to 90% of the death benefit to take care of chronic illness, terminal illness, things that, critical illness, whether you have cancer or you can't, change your own clothes or you need to be fed or whatever the situation may be.
Yeah.
Or if you got, you're diagnosed with a terminal illness, you access your funds while you're still living. That's why they call it living benefits. Yeah. The goal is to live a long life. Therefore, you've gained cash accumulation, and it becomes a legacy component for your children and grandchildren. And that goes to your children and grandchildren. Now they have resources when mom and dad pass.
Yeah.
And if they need in-home health care or in-home care, nursing homes, well, they can then tap into all that money to pay for that. That's the long-term care component.
What a blessing.
Those
Yeah.
are the things that people have to look at. I have those conversations every day when we do retirement planning, but those are older people. I have clients today, well, I want to set this up for my legacy. I want to make sure my children and grandchildren are okay. Great.
Yeah.
You're 80. If they have a lot of money, that's easy. But if you don't, it's too late to get life insurance.
Much different than having this conversation when you're 34.
And here's the other thing I really feel like the younger generation misses. Everybody always says, like right now, housing is a big challenge.
Yeah.
Your generation struggle,
Affordability.
It's affordability. Okay,
Yep.
great. All right. That's a big issue. They're having a hard time purchasing homes. Totally understand. Real estate agent, I get it.
Yeah.
Insurance is $100 a month. For somebody that's really young and you structure it correctly, $100 a month for $150,000 or $100,000 to $150,000, in life insurance, and then every year as you get older, it keeps on increasing with you and grows with you as you age. And if you want to, when you make more money, okay, now I'm going $200 a month, and then $500 a month, and it's so on and so on and so on. And by the time you're 59 and a half, ready to retire, you're sitting on maybe $250,000 or more cash that you can borrow or use, or $1 million life insurance policy in case something happens to you, or and now your children just have $1 million legacy. How about that?
Yeah.
It started at $100.
And I'm so happy you're saying that, because that's another thing I've heard too, is that life insurance is expensive, but
No, I got my
you
first.
can decide. There are different products.
My story.
Everything is so different.
Absolutely, 100%. My story. I was a senior in college. This was presented to me. I got my first life insurance policy when I was a senior in college. Like, I think it was like $25 a month, something like that, you know, 25, $50. Now, obviously it was a long time ago. But then when I got married, I got another one. When I had my daughter, I got another one. When I had my son, I got another one.
JUILs?
All of them. And so I was able to put my kids through school and borrow money and do all these other things, and buy a second house.
And you put them through school without any loans? Yeah.
Zero, no loans. But the reality was, I still have those. I have 3 IULs and a term. Because now it's for my wife. Something happens to me, it replaces all my income. A lot, you know, higher numbers, but replaces my income, and my long-term care component. So if I get to the point where I can't take care of myself, they can use that money to have somebody come in and help.
Yeah. Which, personally speaking, I remember 10 years ago, my mom would always say that, honey, I've set myself up so you don't have to. I'm an only child.
Yeah.
And she would tell me, you don't have to take care of me. And I always thought, like, you're so silly. Okay, that's fine. I won't mind taking care of you in my head.
Yeah.
But now that I saw my grandparents, what she went through taking care of my grandparents, I am so grateful to her for having that set up. And I'm sure your kids and family.
Yes, they all, my wife has them, my daughter, has 2, I just, those are the things that we're doing. I mean, but it's really about making sure we educate people on that particular piece of their financial portfolio, because it really is a big part of the portfolio.
And it's a kind of a grim talk of it. Even hearing, he's talking about it. So I get it. I get why there is that stigma. But
it is. And
through
it's,
conversations like this.
The hardest part, try doing it when you do your trust. Part of the trust is you have to have directives, power of attorneys, and all these other things. Well, one of the directives is your health directive. Are you going to pull the plug? I mean, you have those types of things. Yeah. What are your funeral arrangements? Oh my God. When I wrote those out with my wife, that was like, that was rough. That was emotional, because
I bet.
How do we have that conversation? Yeah. And then you find out, well, I don't want to do what you did. I want to do my, and then you don't really agree on some of those things, but you're having those conversations.
You're having the conversations.
Yes.
You're going to know, versus being in a horrific situation and finding out then is not the time to find out.
Exactly.
So.
That's when it gets really difficult, because I really feel that the plan that is prepared, it helps when these things do occur, because it brings a sense of calmness and peace to the grievers, those who are grieving the loss of a loved one. They're able to grieve without the fear of, oh, what do I do next? What about who's going to pay for my mortgage? Where am I going to get money? Oh my God, what do I do? My kids are going to go to school. How do I tell my children they're this and that? My lifestyles change
going
everything.
Through, I know,
and so
many people that have been in that situation, and it's such a sad, horrible situation to be in.
Yes, and that is probably, that's why I said it's part of the portfolio. It's not the whole. I mean, it's not an entire portfolio. It's a piece, a component, just like a house. I always say buying your first home is the beginning of a wealth strategy. It's the beginning of that process. Part of that.
Such a big milestone.
Yeah, but part of that is also protecting it.
Yes.
And then the next step, and then the next step, and then you start building blocks. Yeah. Well, that's one of the blocks.
So Marco, if anyone has questions about life insurance, who do they contact?
Give me a call. you know, you can schedule an appointment with me, you know, below, or Diandra now, you know, which is always nice, you know, building that team.
Well, when you work with me, you're also working with Marco.
Yeah, we work together, you know, and we have an entire team, so
Yes.
it all works out.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So.